Talmadge Farlow was the first documentary I did. Uh, it was based on the fact that I was a failed jazz guitar player, and I wanted to make a movie about the best jazz guitar player I ever encountered, who was a man named Tal Farlow, a native of North Carolina, who was very renowned in his field, who left the scene at the height of his powers in 1958 and retired from music, supposedly, and went to the Jersey Shore to be a sign painter and just to live his life outside of the limelight. A lot of people thought he was dead, but what in fact he was doing was fishing and painting signs and doing private instruction and playing in like small local clubs. It raised the interesting question of, are you dead if they don't know about you? Or if you're not being covered by the music magazines? Or are you still alive and well? A lot of interesting questions there about what constitutes an active artist versus someone who is maybe less active now than they used to be, but still vitally involved in their craft. Like a lot of documentaries, I think you need to focus on the niche interest. This is a jazz film, a portrait film, a film about philosophy, about life choices, and so on. In seeking funding and support for projects like this, you need to target who is going to be interested, what grant programs, what individual donors, and so forth. In this case, the film was about a $100,000 project. Funds came from so many different areas, from small $50 funders to Atlantic Richfield gave us some finishing funds. I don't know why. I think they just had some money to get rid of, so they decided to put it in this. The late actor George Siegel, who was a friend of mine and an avid musician himself, a banjo player, put some funds into the film because he admired Tal Farlow. It was a patchwork, of sources to bring this about. So that was how this came together. And the film is it was released initially in 1981. It was re-released in 2006 on DVD and continues and never has been out of distribution to be available on Amazon Prime and various other places. So one thing about these documentary films is part of the work is making the film. A lot of the work comes afterwards in terms of shepherding it through the marketplace and making sure it continues to be available to people. So your job as a filmmaker is not just making the film, it's guiding the film in its afterlife. You can go to the next slide, Nahid.
That's so important, Lorenzo. And knowing where you want that film to be, you have to visualize and plan on where it will reach its audience and how you'll get it there.
To the extent that you can, Carol, a lot of this is unpredictable. But again, that comes down to the basic instinct. Whether you're a novice or highly experienced, no one has the complete answer, the complete grasp of you may think you do, but then, you're just a used car salesperson. This is the car for you. You better buy this car. People don't react that way to art and film. It's highly subjective. So again, getting back to that initial point, you need to make these decisions on what you're going to be involved with for years. These are not quick projects, Talmadge Farlow was several years in the making. Los Zafiros, this movie about the Sapphires, the Cuban group, was also 3 or 4 years in the making. I've been traveling to Cuba since '93 as a stage director, as a photographer, and I encountered this group, Los Zafiros, from the 1960s. They were long gone by then, but they had a profound impression on Cuban society and on world music before that was even called world music. You can see from the log line, for those whose lives they deeply touched, Los Zafiros are legends. This film was shot in Cuba and in Miami in 2001. It premiered at the Havana Film Festival in 2002, and again is continuously in this distribution, which is a large part of the job. This was made possible by the families of the two surviving members of the group, Manuel Galban and Miguel Cancio. Both families, one in Havana and one in Miami, supported this effort and lent their allegiance to the group, their connections to various other people who became involved as interviewees and so on. And it grew once I was past muster. This was an interesting case. This is a Afro-Cuban group made up of mixed race musicians from Cuba, Spanish origins, but a lot of African influence as well. Here's a white North American filmmaker coming in with some connections to Cuba already, with a already established interest and feeling of support for Cuba and its people. Someone like me from Hawaii, who is from an island, just like Cubans are from an island. There was an overlap there in terms of maybe being accepted. My color was never a question, which was great. You know, I mean, one of the best compliments I received in Cuba at the screenings was sort of people shocked that the film wasn't made by a Cuban. It affected them so much it became irrelevant who made the film. Just as like maybe it's irrelevant of who wrote a book. Did it work for you or not? You know, we're extremely conscious of filling these quotas, which I think, as I said, is important. I'm not at all resisting that. But I think if it seeps into some of these key decision making, it bypasses the basic humanity of these projects. In other words, who's telling the story? Are they qualified or not to tell the story? Is their heart in the right place? The color of their skin is secondary to the tone of their heart, of their soul, of their feelings for the piece. So, you know, people would say, you gave me my youth back. You know, the film is just going to be screening next month on Canal Caribe, which is a Cuban television network, which is great. I just filmed a testimonial for them that's being subtitled in Spanish. So there you have a filmmaker from outside the culture telling a story deeply connected to the Cuban culture, not just music, but social fabric, and being embraced to tell the story, which is essentially their personal history. So there you have it. That was a refreshing example of being accepted as a filmmaker and not as a person of a certain category of filmmaker, you know. Next slide, Nahid. This is the most recent film released in 2017, Hearing is Believing, about a young musician and composer named Rachel Flowers, who is from the area where I live in Ventura County, who's been blind since birth, was born 15 weeks premature, who I met in January of 2014, and pretty much immediately made a decision that she needed to have a feature documentary made about her. It's basically about a single mom and two kids, one of whom was Rachel, her younger brother, Vaughn, surviving paycheck to paycheck, the mom in a kind of secretarial job. Just the story of how excellence in the arts can spring from somewhere unexpected, you know. The log line here, I know Carol Joyce will be talking about log lines in the future, but they are very important. In a world filled with noise, there's another sound worth hearing, and her name is Rachel Flowers. This film is available, anybody who wants to see it, on Amazon Prime, as are the other films, and Apple Plus, different platforms. So this was a case where you had a disabled character. I wasn't attracted to her because she was disabled. I think Rachel's blindness becomes almost secondary to her view on life, her vitality, her amazing ability to transcend her limitations, which as if they don't even exist. I mean, she is a person with special needs, no question, and that will and has affected her ability to tour. You know, she travels with her mother, as opposed to, she's 29 now, as opposed to other 29-year-old artists who jump on a plane and go anywhere they need to. It's a much more of a challenge for Rachel. But she is a person who lives in a small house in a small town, who's making big music, incredible composer. I actually hired her to do the score for my latest short film, narrative film, Stairway to the Stars, which From the Heart Productions sponsored, and which Carol Joyce executive produced, because I felt that here's a case of why not a blind person being a film composer? That may seem counterintuitive, but Rachel can do anything, just like, you know, people with disabilities can do, if not everything, they can do pretty much anything anyone else can do, given the opportunity. So this funding for this was different than all the others. It was a crowdfunded effort in many ways. There were over 200 funders from all over the world. Rachel had already a significant fan base who responded, again, from the $10 level up to very large funders. Film was budgeted around $400,000. And one of our main funders just passed away, Patty Channer. I'd like to give a little nod to Patty, who was the executive producer, who covered about half of that budget herself. And which is, again, very rare to find someone of an angel like that who will support your projects. But that's how this film came together. And it was a very well received piece.
Hello, I'm Carol Dean, and I've produced and financed many films. I'm teaching a producing class where you can learn financing, acquiring rights, hiring crews, locations, scheduling, post-production, and a lot more. So please consider joining us.
From the Heart helps filmmakers get their projects funded. We are a nonprofit that supports and educates filmmakers on funding films that are unique and make a contribution to society. I am reading a real Google review from Jen Zapp. I am a Roy W. Dean Grant winner of Spring 2014. I have worked with From the Heart Productions on 2 different projects in the last 10 years. Having fiscal sponsorship with From the Here Productions has been instrumental for my crowdfunding campaigns. Carol is an inspirational leader. She has guided me throughout the making of my films.
I've been working with From the Heart for close to a decade on many different projects. From the Heart always provides the highest level of support and has a ton of incredible resources for independent filmmakers. Carol Dean is truly an expert in the field of film funding and genuinely cares about the filmmakers she works with. Carol Dean's and Carol Joyce's mentoring and consultations have been invaluable to me as a filmmaker.